All right, sounds good. Well, you've been staring at this screen for quite some time, so you can see that we're going to be talking about BJC HealthCare, just information about that. And Yulia is correct. So we'll go over our supply chain opportunities and positions and whatnot. So let's get started. So this kind of goes over our agenda for today. We're talking about, I'll introduce myself briefly and then jump into who we are, BJC Healthcare, our healthcare organizations underneath the BJC umbrella, an overview of our mission, our vision, values, and then we'll jump into supply chain, talk about an overview, Supply Plus, which is an initiative that we have going on since 2011, supplier diversity, the organization in general, like how many people makes up, and then the positions that we have. We'll give you I'll give you one example of a position that we have at BJC, and then skills that we look for in all of our positions, pretty much. And then lastly, I wanted to add in a pretty cool thing that I found while researching all of our supply chain opportunities. It's called a automated guided vehicle, and it really helps our supply chain and uh, shipping and receiving. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Then moving on, we'll jump into benefits for working with BJC, like our benefits package, and then the BJC connections groups. And then lastly, we'll talk about tips and tricks for applying with BJC or any company in general, resume tips, application process tips, video interview tips, and then behavioral-based interviews. And then we will wrap it up with a Q&A. So let's get started. So this is me, Nick Domitrovich, and I'm a market intel and sourcing advisor with BJC. I recently started in January, so new to BJC, but not new to talent acquisition. Worked for Tech Systems for about 5 years as a recruiter. But I focus on shared services. So that includes all of our positions in supply chain, quality and process improvement, legal, HR, major gifts, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, the easy way to explain what I do is that we have talent advisors that each represent a specific position on our website. You know, we've got 1,000 or more positions available right now. But I help support the talent advisors that specifically focus on professional positions. So the ones that you see below, including supply. So next up, this is BJC, just all of our different organizations that fall under the BJC umbrella. We are one of the nonprofit healthcare systems in the country. We are actually one of the, we are the largest non-government employer in St. Louis, and we have about 31,000 employees. We also have 14 hospitals, like I said, more than 4,000 doctors and physicians underneath the and about $5 billion in net revenue every year. So that's just a quick snapshot of us. This goes over our vision, our purpose, and some of our core values. Our vision to be the national model among healthcare integrated delivery organizations in patient advocacy, clinical quality, medical research, employee satisfaction, and financial stability. And then our purpose, as one of the largest nonprofit healthcare integrated delivery organizations in the country, we are committed to improving the health and well-being of the people and communities we serve through leadership, education, innovation, and excellence in medicine. And it's not really listed on here, but our core values are compassion, respect, excellence, safety, and teamwork. Really the biggest impact that the culture and the values have had on me, and just from what I could tell so far since I joined BJC in January, is that everybody is very helpful and compassionate. And from the day that I started with BJC, I felt like I was a part of the team. And really, people are just so open and honest, and you're around a lot of people that just want to help you. So just knowing that is pretty cool. But that goes back to one of our core values of compassion. So now we'll get into supply chain. This kind of gives just a basic definition of our supply chain, but effective management of our supply chain and materials management is critical to our success as a hospital system and organization in general. At BJC, you're responsible in the supply chain for product selection, utilization, contracting, logistics, and distribution to ensure that both our patients and our caregivers can receive and provide the best care possible. So I looked up online, searching through us at our supply chain organization, and I found this pretty cool initiative that we started in 2011, where we were seeing a lot of issues with our supply chain, not knowing what our physicians do or need. So we started this transformational journey in 2011 called Supply Plus. And it basically, we wanted to show the strategic potential of the supply chain, not only in terms of making sure that we had high quality, making sure that we were not only just reducing costs, but making sure that we had high quality products with proven patient outcomes. Our clinicians and physicians expected us not only to talk dollars, but instead we talked in terms of total value with this initiative. And multidisciplinary specialty teams were created with supporting physician-based clinical expert councils, which are pretty cool, and I'll talk about them in a second. But they were created to be a part of Supply Plus, and the goal was to create an active partnership between our physicians and our clinicians and the supply chain, just so that there was open feedback and we could evaluate what kinds of products our supply chain is looking at to help with the clinical outcomes that we're looking for. We also created an entire analytics division. So data analytics is really big with BJC and in healthcare and in business in general today. But we wanted to produce cost plus quality data for our physicians and clinicians, and wrapped it up in a project management and process improvement philosophy. So this ensured that our supply chain and clinicians and physicians were on the same page, allowing us to become more efficient and realize more savings. So when I talked about clinical expert councils, those are pretty cool, to where we had the supply chain leaders and managers come together with our physicians and clinicians and basically allow them a forum to provide recommendations to our supply chain and basically talk about the products and topics that we were using and figure out how to influence better outcomes. So 2 examples, one of them is optimized surgery practices to reduce waste. We were examining a lot of medical devices, and one is the number of anchors that's needed in a shoulder surgery. So in some cases, 4 were used and 2 were used. And the physicians in the clinical expert councils, they studied this and they figured out that 2 is actually more efficient and it's more effective. And from a supply chain perspective, it's more efficient. So now we just use 2 anchors instead of 4. And then another way this helped is we reevaluated inventory sources, determined to be clinically equivalent for cost effectiveness. Basically, what I'm saying is that in 2013, we had 2 clinically equivalent products that we looked at and figured out that we were going to use the less expensive one and they were both the same. It ended up saving us $55 million using this less expensive product out of a total spend of $890 million. So you can see that all those savings, the 55 million, could be ways in a hospital system. So this is talking about BJC supplier diversity. While researching the topic of supply chain at BJC, I came across this, and this was just instituted in December of 2020. We're really focused on bettering our community in general at BJC. So this is allowing our supply chain to look more into the smaller players that are out there in business, like small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. And we wanted to give those businesses a better shot at getting equal access to contracts and things with us So that was initiated, and I just think it's a pretty cool policy that is part of BJC's overall business strategy. So this talks about our supply chain organization in general. We've got about 400 individuals that make up our supply chain operations, so pretty large department. The middle bullet point, you can see our hierarchy of different skills, and there's a lot of room to advance and grow within an organization. And then underneath that, you can see different positions like product utilization manager, and that person specifically goes into clinical environments and works with the doctors and surgeons and nurses, figuring out what products are being used and how they're using them. And you would use a lot of like data visualization tools like Tableau. You could be using Excel, but it's a very data-driven position, as well as some of those other ones that you see under there. The one in green I wanted to highlight, and in the next slide I'll talk about it a little bit, but that I think is a great entry-level point with our organization. We have other positions that you might be a good fit for, but that one in particular doesn't require any experience sometimes. So I thought I'd highlight that and talk a little bit more about it. Like I said, I wanted to highlight this just because it's an example of a good entry-level position for a college graduate. And basically, you'd be assisting and coordinating with supply managers, nurses, physicians, and other coworkers to organize and supply different BJC facilities across our organization. You'd also be working with like deliveries and logistics like FedEx, UPS, Cardinal Logistics. So that's a big part of it, is just working on the logistics of working with these different carriers. In this position, you'd be working with purchasing, sourcing, utilization management, and vendor relationships. You'd also be partnering with other departments. You would see things like supplier scorecards, bottleneck evaluations, inventory planning and resource management, data analytics, and waste reduction. So all of these skills are things that you're probably learning about now, but are very important in this role. And then lastly, beyond inventory, you would be working with human capital. So a big part of this role is identifying staffing constraints and coordinating workloads based on assignment distribution. So that's just a quick snapshot into that position. But yeah, moving on. So this slide just goes over basically all of the different skills and experience that we look for in supply chain professionals in our organization. So like I said before, you're probably learning about a lot of these different things. So it's critical that you really, listen to Yulia and learn these things as best as you can so that you can utilize them in your future careers if you decide to go into supply chain. The 4 buckets, data visualization, you'd be basically telling a story or visualizing the data and helping get a better picture of the environment that you're currently in. Lean project planning, you'd be in charge of developing and presenting milestones and timelines and constantly trying to reduce wastes and costs and building budget reports. Supplier scorecards, those scorecards are basically used throughout our entire organization to demonstrate best practices. But the supplier scorecards, they break down supplier performance into individual categories to optimize performance. And then lastly, inventory planning. You'd be working with all those different bullet points, but you'd be working or looking for bottlenecks and forecasting. And like I said before, with the supplier diversity, you'd be trying to find alternative sources rather than just work with the major suppliers and distributors out there. You could look for the small mom and pop shop able to still hit our business needs and demands. And then the last slide I've got on supply chain, I added this last minute. I was doing some more research yesterday, and I thought this would be pretty interesting. I thought it was interesting, but in organization, the main campus for BJC, or Barnes Jewish Hospital, is located at Highway 64 and where Kings Highway meet. And we added 2 new towers in 2018 for our campus renewal project. And because of this, the supply chain, or the shipping and receiving area, about 2,000 feet away from these towers, but the supplies and stuff still had to get from that shipping area to the actual towers. So we implemented these things called automated guided vehicles. And it's a very high tech technology that was implemented because there were challenges, frankly, with humans or people pushing this stuff about 2,000 feet. I mean, these carts can exceed 500 pounds that have bed linens and supplies in them. The AGV, it can actually transport up to 1,000-pound loads. It can traverse that 2,000-foot underground location in about 12 minutes, and it can identify new loads by itself and even go into elevators and move like that. So I thought it was pretty interesting. This is a big part of our supply chain about automating, and I didn't even get into it. I wish I would have, but we even have RFID, which is radio frequency identification. And that's just another way that we're able to manage our inventory. And you can definitely just look up RFID BJC on Google and you'd be able to find stuff on it. So in this section of the talk, I'll just talk about BJC, our benefits. Basically, we have medical, dental, vision insurance, just like most employers nowadays. And then we have a 401k with employer match, paid time off. You get about 23 days as a entry level associate, or somebody that's lower than a director level. I think they get a little bit more. Then there's an employee assistance. I mean, just if you're going through any trouble at home or in your professional life, or just have any kind of thing that you want to talk about, that's a great resource to that's free of charge, and that you can reach out to and just get help when you need it the most. But the one thing that I wanted to cover specifically is this pension plan. Not many companies nowadays have pension plans anymore, but in addition to the 401k, which you have access to with a company match with BJC. So with a 401k, if you're not familiar with pension plans, 401k, you put your money into it tax-free, and then it accrues over time when you can take out money whenever you're retired, and hope that you have enough to last in retirement. With a pension plan, BJC pays all the money into it. You don't pay a single dime. The only stipulation is that you have to work for BJC for 5 years. And then even if you leave BJC and go to a different employer, you're still going to get a pension once you retire. And that's a monthly paycheck every single month until the day you pass away. So pretty cool retirement vehicle that about 10 to 15% of companies still have, and BJC is one of them. BJC Connections. Another great aspect of BJC is our connections groups. Diversity and inclusion are a big part of our identity at BJC, and that's why we're committed to promoting a more diverse, inclusive, and engaged workforce. So this gives you a way to connect with like-minded individuals. And before COVID, we were able to get together for socials or volunteer opportunities, but this is a great way for you to get involved with other people in the organization, get to know how they became what they are today. If somebody is at a higher level than you, you can ask them how they got into that position, what kind of skills or educational experience they were looking, or they got, and how they got to where they are. Just a great tool and a great resource for you to stay connected at BJC. So I'm not sure if you guys can see the resume, but that is my resume. And I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in writing resumes, but that resume got me the job here. So it does work. But basically, just make sure that, the one thing that I want you to make sure is that your resume has at least 3 sections: a summary, experience section and an education section. The two that you could add in, one would be a skills section where you list out different key terms and things that you're skilled with. I would recommend that for people that have a technical background, maybe a programmer, a developer, or whatever it may be, uses specific technologies. I would put that section. And then experience and education. Those obviously you want to put in there, but then you could add in a fifth section, accolades and nations or awards or something, just to show that you have different awards and experience. And then moving on, make sure that your resume is simple. It doesn't include paragraphs of information that really is just hard to read. So make sure that you are using bullet points in your resume, and each bullet point should have a sentence of information. That makes it easy to scan through and be able to know where experience is listed easily. And then when listing your experience, make sure that you're using active language. Active language means that you are the subject, or that the subject of the sentence is performing the action. So since you're the subject of the resume, you should start your sentences with an action verb. So use things like developed, achieved, performed, accomplished, different ones like that. And then lastly, but highly, highly important, and this is coming from a talent acquisition guy myself, make sure that you're proofreading and editing your resume. I mean, typos and grammatical mistakes can really turn off a talent acquisition professional. I mean, it basically just shows that you weren't interested in looking through your resume fully before sending in your resume. So moving on, researching organizations, very important. I would this is going to be a quick slide, but basically explore the organization's website, read company reviews on Glassdoor, Indeed, Handshake, but I would even recommend LinkedIn. And if you're not on that, I would highly recommend that you do join LinkedIn. Just gives you a better understanding of who works where, and you can network with people, reach out to them and ask them questions in a direct message. But it's really important to kind of understand the culture and the background of a company and the benefits of a company, just to prepare for things like interviews. And it really shows how much you prepared if you're talking about those things in an interview. And the only way to know about those things is to prepare. So prepare, prepare, prepare. This talks just briefly about our website for the only thing that I wanted to mention on this is that going to our website to apply, make sure that once you bring up a job description, it's going to have the minimum requirements and the preferred requirements in the job posting. And the minimum requirements, you need to have those in your resume or show them somehow, because if you don't, your resume will automatically be rejected from our system. And then the preferred requirements that you see, those are basically not a requirement. It's a preference. So don't think that you have to hit the PQs or preferred requirements. Our hiring process, this is spot on because I went through it in January or December, where you apply online. Then if you fit the minimum requirements, a talent advisor would be reaching out to you. You do a phone screen with them, and then they would send you along to a hiring manager interview if you do well. All of these interviews nowadays are going to be video interviews, so just be aware of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Then if you go through the hiring manager interview, then you get a chance to actually speak with people that do the job that you're interviewing for, where you can get to know a little bit more about the job, what the day-to-day responsibilities are, and asking questions and just getting to know more about the environment is going to really set you apart, just show that you're very interested in the role. And then lastly, you would get an offer if you did well. And then right around the same time, you would have to give professional references. So making sure that right now, while you're going to school, while you're working at different jobs or internships, making sure that you're talking to your supervisors and asking them up front, hey, are you able to give me a reference? And I think that that goes a long way, and just it does come up with employers nowadays where you do have to provide references, and we do check them. And then lastly, the pre-employment process. This is a drug test, background check, and an occupational health appointment. It takes about 10 days to get through that. And
It looks like Nick froze. We'll give him a second to unfreeze.
Yeah, by the way, let's just to use the post. If you have any questions along the lines. Oh, wait.
He left the webinar, so he'll be back in a second to share his screen.
Okay. So just an announcement for the students. So if you have any questions along the way, use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom, and you can ask the questions anonymously. Otherwise, you can also hold them until the end of the session and ask them after the presentation is over.
I think I just phased out in this slide, but reading over the job description, filling out all the prompts, just making sure that you are applying with the most up-to-date information, and make sure that you're giving us your phone number and your email address. Navigating our career site, you can search opportunities by using keywords. One thing to know is that you can work or look through with categories like information services, support, supply chain, and then you can also search by job status or shift type. But one thing to show or mention is that whenever you search a keyword on our site, if you don't come up with any results, but you want to keep you kept in mind for those results in the future, like we don't have a current opening available right now, but maybe in the future we do, you would be able to see a thing that says get job alerts. So that'll keep you updated on any positions that we might have in the future. And then I think we got 2 more slides, so bear with me, but video interview tips. Well, one thing, does it say anything about internet connection in there? But yeah, my apologies for that. Just be prepared to log in early to any video platform that you're working with, whether that's Zoom or Teams or Skype or any one of those. Just make sure that you know the functionality. And even with us, with Yulia and Carl, we met on Friday this past week to make sure that this was all going to work properly. So we were prepared, but don't sit too close to the camera. Be aware of your surroundings. Like make sure that you have a white or blank background behind you, and to also dress professionally. It's the worst when you show up to a interview and you just have, a polo on. I mean, that might work for some people, but I would say that the least amount of clothing you should have on would be for men, a button-down shirt, a tie, and a jacket. And you really don't need to have any professional dress from the waist down now that it's the age of COVID. But if it makes you feel better, you can definitely wear a full suit. But for women, a nice professional blouse or dress. Lastly, behavior-based interviews. Most interviews nowadays that you do, you're going to be asked these situational questions, where this style of question is basically asked to see how you would handle certain situations and to demonstrate some past experience. So there's a lot of resources available online for people to see, different answer or different questions being answered. But the main framework that you should use is the STAR technique, which is situation or set the scene, task, describe the issue or problem you're confronted with, action, describe the action you took to intervene in the situation, and then results, describe the results your action generated. So I think that this is very important for students or people that are going to be starting to interview, to learn some of these questions and practice. So, well, that was basically it. I appreciate you guys joining today. And sorry about that again. I'm going to kick myself the rest of the day for my internet connection not holding up, but I will open it up to any questions you guys might have.